2015 with me, Christine Hui. You're watching an annual live show hosted by UniTV, where we hear from the candidates running for full-time officer roles at the University of Sussex Students' Union. Well, this year there has been a revision of the roles on offer. We'll be hearing tonight from candidates running for officer positions in the following categories: society and citizenship, activities, welfare, undergraduate education, postgraduate education, and finally, the Students' Union President. So this is how it's going to work. There will be one set question per section for the candidates to answer, and then in every round, I will ask each participant a personalised question during which they can expand on their individual manifestos. Following that, there will be a discussion topic for the candidates in each round to debate amongst themselves. Each candidate is vying for your vote as a member of the University of Sussex Students' Union. Just log into www.sussexstudent.com/vote to find out how to vote for your choice. Voting opens at 9 a.m. on Monday, the 23rd of March. That's next Monday, the 23rd of March at 9 a.m. But we'd love to hear your opinions now during the course of the show. Just tweet in using the hashtag #SussexElections. We'll be reading your tweets out throughout the show. You can also keep updated through our social media. That's facebook.com/UniTV Live, and the same handle on Twitter, again, UniTV Live. Well, first up, we'll be hearing from the candidates running for the position of Society and Citizenship Officer. The Society and Citizenship Officer is a new full-time officer role, and this position represents students in matters relating to active citizenship, community engagement, and ethical and environmental action. Let's hear from the first round of candidates running for this role.
Drugs awareness and safety in form of safety workshops, leading to a wider student-led national campaign to pressure the government into re-evaluating its drugs laws. Secondly, I would campaign for Sussex to be everyone's Sussex, in terms of it being as safe, accessible and accepting as possible. And I'd finally campaign to make Sussex as green as possible, starting off with making every bin on campus a recycling bin. So if you like what you hear, then go Gonzalez and vote for me.
Hi, I'm Neelam and I'm running for Societies and Citizenship Officer. If I'm elected, I'll set up Sussex Street University, which will involve linking the community and students so that we can take knowledge that we have in the university out into the streets to the public. And we'll be doing some workshops in barbershops and talks. I'll also set up a subject-specific careers fair, creating long-term stability for students, and also provide training for students so they can be empowered to be at the forefront of national campaigns.
Welcome to the studio, Leila Gonzalez and Neelam Rai, for our first round of questioning. Our first question goes to both candidates, who will each be given a turn to answer. Well, let's start with you first, Leila, and this is your question. If the Students' Union could introduce the living wage for all student staff tomorrow, but the cost of this would mean losing 2 full-time officer positions, what would be the right thing to do?
I think that we shouldn't get rid of the 2 full-time officers, essentially because I think the officers are too important, and if we got rid of them, the Students' Union would not be able to effectively run, and the student body wouldn't be effectively represented. But I do think that fighting for living wage is something that's really important, and I think that it's something that Students' Union should continue to fight for. I know currently they're aiming to get the living wage by 2017, but I think that this should be brought forward. And I think we should campaign for this because it's not only important as a student body, but I think the living wage should be something that the whole UK should have, and it's something that we need. I think considering that the living wage for the Students' Union to become a living wage employer, it costs them between 42 and 64 grand a year. And I know that our Vice-Chancellor of our university is getting 30 grand more than the average Vice-Chancellor's wage of 250 grand a year. So I think we should be looking for the living wage to come from different places in our university and not at the cost of student representation.
Do you think these 2 full-time officer positions would be vital in order to fight for living wage for all student staff?
Definitely, yeah. I think we need every student officer position that we have at the moment in order to continue the fight for living wage. I think that the union wouldn't be able to function without any of the 2 full-time officers. It takes all 5 officers to fight together for living wage for the rest of the student body.
Thank you. Neelam, let's hear your answer for the set question. Again, if the Students' Union could introduce the living wage for all student staff tomorrow, but the cost of this would mean losing 2 full-time officer positions, what would be the right thing to do?
I think that you'd have to keep the full-time officer positions, and that it should be done continuously and gradually, so it's sustainable. And I think if you got rid of those positions, it would damage students in the long term, because they wouldn't have these people to represent them, and to be able to push these big important policies through, to push something like the living wage through, it takes a team that big, it takes that manpower. And having run the Society Iton Sussex, we need that manpower to push it. We have the ideas and we know exactly what we're going to do. We have that aim. For example, knowing that you want the living wage, but if you don't have the people behind that to do it, then it's not possible. It would affect students drastically in the long term.
Which two full-time officer positions would you think would be the most crucial in this sort of movement?
Definitely society and citizenship, and also I think everyone would have to work together to push it through, but I think society and citizenship is the main one.
Thank you. Okay, well, I'm now going to ask you questions based on your personal manifestos. Neelam, let's start with you now. What sort of community events do you plan to organise for Library Square?
Okay, so I want to get people from the community in who are part of wider liberation groups in the community. So, for example, for running my society, I've linked up with the Brighton and Hove Black History Group, and I found it so empowering to have that connection with people from different walks of life who have been through the same experiences I have, and not just students, because obviously it's really important that we have those liberation groups there, but to have those people come in and say that I'm affected by this too, and this is how I acted on it and gone through that.
Thank you. Well, Layla, here's your question. How would you run drug workshops?
I'd work with local charities in the Brighton area, because considering that Brighton's had like a history and reputation of being the drugs capital of the UK, and there's so much stigma around drugs, there's so many charities that we could work with that are really keen to change that stigma attached to drugs and like save lives, like starting with the student body. So I'd work with local charities in order to set up a free workshops where people can discuss freely questions they want to know about the safety of drug taking, and educate people on the drugs laws and the war on drugs, and understand why the war on drugs has happened and why the laws are the way they are, and why there's a need to currently reevaluate them, and how we can campaign to get that done.
Okay, well, now we're going to give you 2 minutes to discuss your opinions on the following topic between you. The discussion topic is this: more car parks should be built on campus as the university expands for student drivers, even if this means less green space or space for cycle racks. Please discuss.
I think that they should not be built more car parks. I don't think that should happen. Do you think it should?
I agree. I think it would encourage more. It wouldn't encourage people to use public transport or things that the officers have been doing now to encourage bike riding. It would completely undermine all this.
Green transport needs to be encouraged as much as possible, mainly in the form of cycling, which has been like the Students' Union has done loads for that this past year, which has been amazing. Unless you were going to encourage carpooling as a way for people to get to uni, then there'd be absolutely no excuse for building more cars other than more pollution and less green. It just doesn't seem like something our Students' Union should be doing.
And we can encourage carpooling anyway. We don't need to put a car park in.
Yeah, we should encourage carpooling, and that should decrease the amount of cars.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's the last thing I think that we'd campaign for if any of us were to be society.
We wouldn't have space. We don't have space for it. We've got the national park around us. We don't want to lose that.
Yeah.
If, say, students or staff were campaigning for more parking space, what would you do to stop this?
I think I'd push a carpooling scheme in order to encourage people to be more environmental and help. That's the best way they can travel. Also, campaign for cheaper bus travel and safer cycling routes to and from university. Just campaign for other ways of transport, really.
Neelam, what do you think?
I think just working with students on talking about different forms of transport and different ways they can get to uni, and just encouraging people to do that together, like having things that the activities officer has done, like having bike trains, so you can do that together. There's a sense of community, that it's not just, I've got to go out on my own and do this.
Okay, well, thank you to the both of you. Well, now let's take a look at the next round of candidates running for the same position of Society and Citizenship Officer.
Hi, my name's Sarah Gibbons and I want to be your Society and Citizenship Officer for next year. I'm a postgraduate student studying international development, and with your vote, these are my promises to you. I want to make the university more ethical and more environmentally friendly, so I will continue the push for the university to divest from fossil fuels. I also want to create a greater sense of unity between students and the residents of Brighton. So please vote for me and go bananas for Gibbons. Thank you.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, break out.
Well, we're now in a second round for Society and Citizenship Officer, and we're joined by Vivek Rajkumar and Sarah Gibbons. Well, again, let's begin questioning. And our first question is directed to both candidates. Vivek, let's hear from you first. Well, your question is, if the Students' Union could introduce the living wage for all student staff tomorrow, but the cost of this would mean losing 2 full-time officer positions, what would be the right thing to do?
Okay, big up to my homies in East Slope and upstairs also in Silverton. To begin with, there is no right thing. There are different actions which have different consequences, and we as a society and a union will have to weigh that up. There'll be different things we'll have to cut in each case. If we were to drop the living wage and don't implement it, what it means is that we're underpaying our staff, and not legally underpaying, but ethically underpaying. One counter argument for that, though, is that the staff currently don't seem to mind being underpaid because we're not legally underpaying them, obviously. When we were discussing this in council, V. Cartwright, who's also on the council, mentioned that she would rather earn a less than living wage, but still above a minimum wage, than see jobs be cut. If we were to keep the living wage, we have to cut, if we cut 2 positions, which 2 are we going to cut? And that's going to be affecting student representation. It's going to be affecting everything that you hear people from those 2 positions who you want to cut come here and say. Ultimately, what we have to do, we need a bigger grant from uni. Uni needs to invest more funding, and the government needs to invest more funding in education. This is ultimately a trickle-down consequence of austerity, or one for the future.
Okay, well, what would you do personally to implement this?
Personally, I would not implement the holiday pay portion of it. I would keep the hourly living wage, or implement the hourly living wage, and that will keep us within the union's budget. We will have to make cuts, but combined with that, I will also lobby to get more funding from the union, and I will also encourage the union to lobby the government to fund the uni itself and education more.
Okay, well, thank you. Same question to you again, Sarah. If the Students' Union could introduce the living wage for all student staff tomorrow, but the cost of this would mean losing 2 full-time officer positions, what would be the right thing to do?
Okay, so I am a member of staff at the Student Union shop, so it's an issue that's quite personal to me because it's something that would affect me if I was to continue to work there. So I've also been included in the discussions around this policy, and I think one of the concerns was in the referendum that the students assumed that this kind of policy would be implemented quite quickly, but in actual fact, to maintain the kind of financial stability of the Students' Union, it would need to be implemented incrementally. So I think one of the important things to do would be to increase the financial transparency, so allow the students to understand the policy better, and then the process as well. I believe that the current 2-year plan to increment the living wage for the staff would be the most appropriate way to continue. The loss of 2 full-time officers would be a huge loss to the student body and to the representation, and so no, I don't think it would be the right thing to do. One of the other things that I think comes up in the discussions quite a lot is the non-student staff who are also part of the community on the university for the university campus, and that they should be involved in the decision making, because at the moment they're not really given a voice. So that would be one of the things that I'd like to see.
How do you think you would get these non-student staff to get involved with this movement?
I think they would be really, really happy to be asked and consulted about their views. I think it would also make them feel part of the community that they work with, and because they're working with students, they're working for the student body as well. So the fact that they could be involved in the decision-making process, I think would be something they'd be quite happy to be involved in.
Okay, well, now let's move on to the personal questions. We'll start with you again, Sarah. Do you think that fair trade is more important than affordability?
It's a really tough question, especially seeing as fair trade can often be more expensive. I think the fact that the student union shop is able to stock fair trade products at a discounted price because of the format of the consortium with the National Union of Students is a really good way of being able to balance the two and being able to give students an option to be aware of the consequences of their buying power, as well as fitting in with their budget. But I do think more can be done to make ethical products more affordable for the whole population.
Okay, well, thank you. Vivek, how did you decide the correct amount of profit for the SU shop is to get off an essentials shelf?
Oh, okay. Okay, so I volunteer with Scoop, the student-run food cooperative, where we buy food in bulk and then sell it on cheaply at cost price, so as near as cost as we can possibly make it. Currently, I think our profits is at about 15 or 10%. 10% was a number that I came across for that, and it isn't something like the SU shop cannot sustainably run on 10% profit across its entire range of products. 10% just including cost, buying cost of the things. But I think that if we had a essentials shelf of just things like baked beans and whatever the quick high turnover items we have, then students will be able to see a massive difference in their bill, like we have in Scoop. And the union is something that could facilitate this. It would be an extension of an idea which a student society came up with, trialed, found was successful, taking this on to the wider student population. We've had a good response in Scoop. I believe we'll have a good response in the student union shop, and would also raise the profile of the shop, so more people shop in there as opposed to the on-campus expensive cooperative, and hopefully that would have a knock-on effect of lowering the prices in the cooperative.
Okay, thank you. Well, now let's move on to the discussion topic. We're going to give you 2 minutes now to discuss the following. More car parks should be built on campus as the university expands for student drivers, even if this means less green space or space for cycle racks. Please discuss.
Okay. I think increasing the car parks is going to potentially increase the amount of students driving onto campus, and I think a better policy would be encourage alternative modes of transport. I think students get frustrated with the buses, so I think working with the bus companies to maybe address those issues instead, to make more sustainable transport efficient and easy would be one of the things I'd like to look at. I also think that cycling for all students is not often an option for accessibility reasons or for safety, and so I think maybe looking at working with the big lemon bus instead would be something that would be an alternative option.
Okay, completely agree. I do agree we need transport as one of my key issues for my manifesto. We have to get cheaper bus fares and they will rise, and we have to have some sort of competitive alternative to bring them back down. I completely agree that we need to, as a union, support the big lemon bus so we have a competitive alternative in the market that would give Brighton and Hove an incentive to keep their bus prices low, or at least ensure that they don't have a monopoly. Car parks versus cycle spaces. I think we definitely need more cycle racks, and not just more, but we need them to be more conveniently located and accessible on campus. And even if people with accessibility issues cannot cycle, they would still benefit from us having a diverse range of transport options and bringing down the overall cost of travel. Also, students lots of times can't afford a car and can't afford fuel. I certainly cannot. Young people on the whole are opting out of getting their license, are now opting out of motoring the way our parents' generation did. So we have to plan things around more sustainable forms of public transport rather than just every motorist having their own car.
Okay, well, thank you both for your time. Well, we've now heard from all of those running for the position of Society and Citizenship Officer. Don't forget to let us know what you think of this year's candidates with the hashtag Sussex Elections, and keep following our Twitter and Facebook, both at UniTV Live, for updates. Well, let's move on now to the next round, activities. The Activities Officer represents students in matters relating to active involvement within the Students' Union and its sport, volunteering, and other student-led activities. Here are our first round of candidates.
Hi, I'm Emily Emily Robbins and I'm running for Activities Officer. I want to bring societies together and put them on the map. I'll introduce big events and fundraising opportunities and get people involved in volunteering through community outreach projects and events. I'll create an activities and volunteering hub on campus with a weekly calendar of events. For sports, I'll campaign for cheaper gym membership for sports fed holders, termly payment option for sports fed, and open beginner skill sessions. Finally, I want to create an all-inclusive graduation festival. Check out my extended manifesto online and vote Robbins Girl Wonder to protect your interests.
Hi everyone, I'm Lindsay. You might know me as a smiley bikie girl. I'm going for re-election for Activities Officer. I want to bring the Homelessness World Cup to Brighton with the hope of Brighton Albion Football Club. I want to continue to support sustainable and community action societies to set up an energy co-op with solar panels on campus, set up liberation conferences so political and socially justice-minded and charitable societies can work together, because together we're more than the sum of our parts, and the Role Models Project, bringing together local secondary school students and Sussex students for conversations about mental health.
Hi everyone, I'm James and I'm going to be your elected Activities Officer. I'll give you an approachable officer by holding fixed weekly drop-in sessions, open to every sport, society and volunteer. I want to celebrate student art on your campus by offering more opportunities for diverse performances and displaying student art in our union outlets. I want to rebrand Sport for Sussex, providing alternative ways to get involved through coaching and officiating, developing community links for disability sports and rebranding kit to give an identity for everyone. Finally, I want to give you a bigger and better Freshers Week, including an all-day festival-style welcome event. If you want an officer that works hard, plays hard, vote South hard.
Well, running for Activities Officer with us right now, we have Emily Robbins, Lindsay Burtonshaw and James Southard. Let's get started with the set question for your category. Emily, let's start with you. Given the Students' Union position on responsible drinking, should sports teams be prohibited from seeking sponsorship from bars?
Okay, the short answer to that is no for me. Firstly, because sponsor bars provide a vital source of funding for sports teams, so it'd be unpractical to completely cut them off. Secondly, it's important to remember that sports socials are a long tradition centred around social bonding. They're not all about the drinking, and not everyone drinks on sports teams. Thirdly, a ban won't necessarily solve the issue. If people want to binge drink, they can do it at home. I think it's safer to do it in an establishment, especially considering that bars have to encourage responsible drinking themselves. They can't have people like rolling on the floor and like getting ill. And fourthly, my solution would be to encourage sports teams to actively get involved in other campaigns involved in about responsible drinking, and make sure newcomers are aware that they should always know their limits and that it's not all about the booze at all.
Well, in terms of the whole newcomer and limits thing, what do you think what sort of effect do you think this would have on things like initiations?
There's other things you can do in initiations. It's not all about drinking. Like, for example, in our team, we do silly stuff like involving like food or get a bit messy. So it's not always about drinking, not at all.
Okay, thank you. Lindsay, same question to you. Given the Students' Union position on responsible drinking, should sports teams be prohibited from seeking sponsorship from bars?
I pretty much agree with what Emily just said. I'd just add that, let's be realistic, drinking would happen and sponsorship deals would happen even if we didn't agree with them. And I think what Emily said about controlling like hazing and initiation rituals, it's all about keeping the communication open about the effects of drinking. So the I Heart Consent campaign, for instance, has been really powerful about talking about the effects of alcohol and consent and having that in a situation like on Sport Wednesdays when people can hook up. It's just good having those conversations going. Additionally, I think that the Rugby Club have really set an amazing example with their reinstatement this year. Myself and the committee co-drafted a new code of conduct, and explicitly one of the drafts, one of the clauses was about responsible drinking and the fact that non-drinkers are welcomed in clubs. And we've actually started conversations about rolling this out to all clubs, because having these hierarchies involved with drinking in clubs, that's what erodes our community. It's not the actual drinking, because like Emily said, drinking is going to happen anyway. It's about doing it in a responsible manner.
Okay, thank you. Well, again, same question to you, James, if you want me to read it again. Given the Students' Union position on responsible drinking, should sports teams be prohibited from seeking sponsorship from bars?
Okay, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, absolutely not. Sports and societies have some really positive events in bars, from gigs to pub quizzes to talent shows. Some societies, such as Polymath, actually turn up on a Thursday night in Falmer, and they run their societies within the bars. So it's a really important venue, for one thing. Secondly, we shouldn't be discouraging sponsorship at any level, especially not at the Students' Union, because it provides invaluable funding and venue hire. A number of clubs do rely on this, and obviously given the lack of space and funding in some cases for the Students' Union, we definitely shouldn't be discouraging seeking other arrangements. Thirdly, if censoring sponsorship is now something we're doing as a union, should we be censoring the entire student experience? Should we be censoring Freshers Week or campuses or accommodation? Should all of this be alcohol free? Should we just get rid of our bars? Absolutely not, because firstly I and a number of other students work there and we'd be out of a job. But secondly, we should be promoting responsible drinking, not blaming the location of socials for this irresponsible behaviour that can happen.
Okay, well, thank you. Let's move on now to the questions about your own personal manifestos. Let's start with you, Lindsay. What is the Homeless World Cup and how would it work?
I'm so glad you asked that. So this is super exciting. Basically, in my year as an activities officer, I've been keeping sort of a note of conversations I've been having with people and common threads that keep coming up. One particular example was a student made a Facebook event to go and feed the homeless, and it got like 500 students saying they were going to attend, and I was shocked by this. It was like, wow, there's a lot of passion and commitment to this incredible reaching out to the community, and homelessness has actually increased in Brighton 98% in the past 4 years, so it's very visible, students are very aware of it. So in my manifesto, when I was drafting my points, I was thinking, what do students actually really care about, what's missing? And it's this connection with the local community, and I think homelessness is something that we could really connect with together. So the Homeless World Cup, this year it's in Amsterdam. Really recommend everyone to look on YouTube. The videos are so inspiring. Basically, it's all across the road. Homeless people are invited to make teams, because one of the ways that people lead rehabilitation programs is through football, because it promotes teamwork. Like, sports are incredible for getting people off the streets and getting them together, talking to people. It's absolutely phenomenal. So all these teams come together to play in the World Cup, and it's something that we as a community could come together to help make this event happen. I've already been talking with Brighton Hove Albion about it and local homelessness charities, and they're really keen on the idea. It just needs students to get behind the idea, and there'd be so much incredible volunteering opportunities. I think it'd be amazing.
Okay, well, thank you. James, now on to your question. How would you celebrate student art on campus?
So glad that came up. Okay, we have a lot of amazing art societies and a lot of amazing art going on in our Students' Union and in our university. So we've got from Yoga Society, who have been nominated this year for a student award. We've got plenty of dance, we've got music, we've got a lot going on. And sometimes I feel like that's underrepresented in our union and on our campus. So I'd like to bring that back. I'd like to get student art in our union outlets, so in Room 76, in Falmer House. I want to get more diverse opportunities and more diverse performances for our performance arts. So I want yoga workshops, I want dance workshops, I want all sorts of alternative music, all sorts of different different events. I think a really good example of this was the Sussex Festival, which was held in October last year. I played a small role in that, but the guys at Sussex Records did an amazing job, and I think that was a really good demonstration of the sort of the variety of performances we can have, and I think we should be celebrating that at Sussex and on our campus.
I know that dance and yoga do have their own workshops, but how do you plan on promoting these and making them known to the whole campus?
So obviously we've got quite a great platform here with our student media, and I don't think that's necessarily used as much, so I'd like to integrate that a lot more. I'd like to introduce a Society of the Week and the Badger, and obviously anyone could use that, so any of our dance societies could use that. I'd like to do regular features on UniTV or URF. I'd like to basically give students a platform which is already there, and I think really can bring a lot more people and get a lot more people involved.
Okay, thank you. Emily, how will you ensure societies have fair access to campus space?
Okay, so basically I want to make the system easier for booking, so have an online system where they can just find out where they can book and make sure that rooms are allocated to the proper societies, and make sure that, I know some societies want to have the same room consistently every week, so make sure that happens. Because at the moment I just feel like it's a bit up in the air. A lot of societies have said they don't have the right space they want. I know with the new Attenborough Centre that brings a lot of opportunity for societies to get the space they want, so hopefully, fingers crossed, that'll happen. Especially for dance societies, obviously they don't have their own space as of yet, so I'd really like that to make that happen for them.
Well, aside from the Attenborough Centre, what sort of spaces are you thinking of? I know Mandela Hall is often quite overbooked. So what other spaces do you think would be useful in terms of getting more sort of campus space for these societies?
I think in a lot of ways it might be good to get external space. I know for dance it might be useful to get some external dance studios because we don't have that kind of space on campus. I also find a lot of the time there are rooms that aren't actually used, so making sure the rooms that aren't in use are filled by societies that need them. Because we have so many societies and there just simply is not enough space. Obviously I can't say I'm going to create a new building because that's unrealistic, but I just want to make sure that I can do the best I can for the societies.
Okay, thank you. Well, we're now going to give you 2 minutes to discuss amongst yourselves the following topic. Is it more important to have a large quantity of societies and activities available to students, or is quality more important?
Well, I think at Sussex we've got a really unusual situation where I know lots of other unions, they put a limit on the number of societies that they're allowed, and we don't do that at Sussex, and I think that's a really positive thing, because obviously we've got like a high turnover of students, so every 3 years people leave and different societies come up, and I think that it's not about focusing quantity or quality, it's more about making sure that what is happening is going to be like not turned over, so it wouldn't disappear. So for instance, we've got a lot of societies at the moment that are very much like along the same sort of idea, but it's about making sure that they're looked after.
For me, it's very important to make sure you have the quantity, because I think it's so great how societies allow people to express themselves and have a good time, like whatever their interest is, be it swarm, be it squash, or whatever it is. So I think it's really important to maintain the quantity of societies to suit the interests of the people at the uni. But it's also trying to find that balance. It's difficult because obviously both are important. You want to make sure all societies are getting their needs fulfilled. So yeah, it's difficult trying to find out what the balance should be.
Yeah, I think
both are important.
we've got a very sort of diverse range of societies at Sussex. I think that's something to really be celebrated. With over 200, there really is something for everyone. And I definitely think that's probably more important than the quality, because the quality is sort of what you put into it. And I think one of the best experiences you can have as a student is putting yourself forward for a committee and really gaining some incredible life experiences, as well as great experiences and memories, and making great friends by joining these societies and playing a leading role in these.
Okay, well, thank you all very much for your time. Let's get introduced now to our next round of candidates vying for the position of Activities Officer.
Hi there, I'm Johnny, and I'm running to be your Activities Officer. If you vote for me, some of my main manifesto points are work experience for your society, grassroots level entry into sport, and above all, it's about having fun. You're 3 years here at Sussex, so make the most out of your time, enjoy yourself, and I'm here to help you. Do your campaigns, do your activities, but just have a lot of fun.
Hello everyone, I'm Hong Xiaxu, second year undergraduate business and management student rep counselor in the student union. I really hope I could be selected as the activity officer. Firstly, I want to set advice time for new societies and clubs. Secondly, I want to plan more volunteer opportunities on the international level. Thirdly, I want to get more sponsors to support student union activities. Thank you very much.
Well, hello and welcome to the studio, Johnny Harris and Hong Xiaxu. As with the other candidates, here is your set question first. Well, I'll ask you to answer first, Johnny. Given the Students' Union position on responsible drinking Given the Students' Union position on responsible drinking, should sports teams be prohibited from seeking sponsorship from bars?
Well, I don't think that is a feasible idea. The amount of revenue we get from the bars is a lot of money. A lot of the sports teams are dependent on this sponsorship, and it's also a key part of the social aspect of sports. I also genuinely believe that these clubs can be used for good reason. So, for instance, in my manifesto I talk about rehearsal space. I want to use clubs as rehearsal space in the daytime. The way we can combat this, though, is by drinking awareness weeks, by drinking awareness events. Also to stop peer pressure by other sports teams to get into the drinking culture. But I think the most important aspect is we're all adults. We are responsible and we should be able to make our own decisions.
Well, how do you plan on countering this sort of peer pressure?
So, for instance, on the rugby team, we have a policy where we will not make anyone drink unless they want to. So if they want to drink water, they can drink water. And I think that's really important because at university, you are expected to do things and people perceive you in a certain way. And it's not fair to think that all sports players are big drinkers. They're not. So, I think if we are acting as a community, as a team, we're able to combat this.
Okay, thank you. Hong Xia, same question. Given the Students' Union position on responsible drinking, should sports teams be prohibited from seeking sponsorship from bars?
I think it's not necessary to completely forbidden the sports team from seeking sponsorship from bars, but we are supposed to find a new sponsorship such as sports brand companies or gyms. I think there are 3 ways to improve this. Firstly, we need to set limited times of drinking for sports team when they get the sponsorship from bars. Secondly, I think we could find a new sponsorship such as sports brand companies, because students, they need buy the sports clothes as well, and it's also a way to encourage them to do more sports as well. And thirdly, I think we could also make a collaboration with gym as well, because there are a lot of students live off campus. It would be easier for them to go to gym as well.
Do you have any examples or any ideas of sports brands or gyms that you might want to get in contact with?
I think such as the famous sports brand company Nike. I think there is a shop on the town center. We can make some efforts to build the relationship with them, because it will also help them to promote their company as well.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm now going to ask you questions about your individual manifestos. Johnny, let's start with you again. How would you provide a fairer room and pitch higher?
So I am very much in favour of an AU, an athletics union, where Sussex Sport and Sussex Sports teams read together as one. So the way the system works at the moment, the smaller societies and actually quite large societies like dance aren't getting the right amount of space. So one way, as I mentioned before, I want to use clubs as rehearsal spaces for suds, for band practice. So we're actually using available good space, which is just being neglected right now.
Okay, thank you. Well, here's your question, Hongxia. What would advice time sessions for new societies involve, and what are advice time sessions?
I was plan to set an advice time weekly basis in my in activity office. I think it will be provide an approachable space for them to just come into the office to discuss the different issues they have encountered. It would be more easier and efficient for them to find us to discuss.
Would this be just for new societies or also established ones?
What I mean is to encourage new societies to come into the office to discuss issues, but it's also a time to supervise existing societies to let them feel they are always supported as well.
Okay, thank you. Well, we're now going to give you 2 minutes to discuss amongst the two of you the following topic. Is it more important to have a large quantity of societies and activities available to students, or is quality more important?
Well, I generally believe that you can't have too many societies. There are societies which are based around others, so there's a law society, but then there's also commercial awareness, and other ones which are based around law. The quality of a society shouldn't be based on how many societies are in the union. The union should be having quality societies every time. There's enough people in the union who know their jobs, wonderful people, and we can make every society fantastic.
What I think, I partly agree with Johnny, but what I think is on the basis of guarantee the quality of societies, we could increase more societies as well, because the more we will all provide an opportunity for them to build their societies and provide them advice and support for them to make our university more wonderful. That's my opinion.
This is what I've always said. I play rugby and I recognise that I play rugby. That's my way of having fun. That might not be someone else's. Someone else might want to do drama. Someone else might want to do a political campaign. That's their idea of how they want to use their university time. And I think as the activities officer, we should enhance everyone to do exactly how they feel they want to experience university.
Okay, well, thank you both for your time and for coming here today. Well, we've now heard from everyone running for activities officer, and we'll be moving on to the next round, welfare. This position ensures that each and every student has adequate support for any issues that they might encounter as a student at the University of Sussex, and to proactively represent students' rights on and off campus. Let's meet our first round of candidates.
Hi, I'm Rihanna and I'm running for re-election as your welfare officer. I've really loved working in this position for the last 9 months and I really want the opportunity to do it again. I want to continue working on my 3 campaigns: Time to Change to improve the mental health services on campus, IHOP Consent to embed consent education into induction, and Access Sussex to continue improving campus accessibility. I also want to start a free sanitary product scheme. So please vote Rihanna for welfare.
Hi, I'm Emily Pinto and I would love to be your next welfare officer. I'm passionate about making your university experience as fun, safe and empowering as possible. I would improve support services by pushing for an increased availability of counselling appointments and the formation of a mental health peer support group. I will work closely with liberation groups and officers to continue the Access Sussex campaign, set up an LGBTQI inclusive sexual health project and put a real emphasis on liberation events such as Black History Month. I also want to create a chill-out zone on campus and produce guides on cost-cutting and energy efficiency.
It'll be okay. It's over. Sorry. Well, we're here now with Emily Pinto, Rihanna Gargiulo, and Jamal Langley. So let's get started with the questions first. Here is your set question, and I'll be asking you to answer first, Jamal. If the university offered to double the amount of support service provision, but the cost of this would be increased rents on campus, would this be acceptable to you?
No, it wouldn't be, because we need to increase spending on the support services and also be tough on the causes at the same time. Loads of people I know at uni have actually suffered from depression because of Brighton being an unaffordable space to live in. Like my friend recently went to the counselling service and he was told that he would have to wait 6 weeks to be seen about his depression. And his depression was caused by the fact that he had no money kind of in the first place. And I think an earlier candidate, Layla, said that Michael Farthing earned 30 grand more than the average Vice-Chancellor. And I think he's a bit of a scumbag. And that's where the funding should come from.
Okay, fair enough. Well, how would you propose this sort of transfer of funds?
Well, basically, I think the university is quite profitable. We're always expanding, and I feel like the university should look after the welfare of their students. It's basically unacceptable for what's going on. Like, if you're moving away from home, you should be looked after.
Okay, well, Rihanna, same question to you. If the university offered to double the amount of support service provision, but the cost of this would be increased rent on campus, would this be acceptable?
I feel like we're all going to have a very similar answer to this question because I don't think anyone believes it's acceptable. The university clearly has a choice on how it spends its money. Similar to what Jamal said, the Vice-Chancellor's salary went up by 5.1% just in this year alone. The money that the university spends on marketing and trying to get more students in as if they are profitable without actually taking account of their welfare whilst they're here. The support services that we have cannot, support the number of students we have at this point, and yet the university is constantly trying to expand and grow and get bigger student numbers. And at the same time as well, the cost of rents on campus is constantly going up, despite the fact that the Students' Union continues to lobby. I've spent the last year in meetings with the management group talking about how the university really needs to consult meaningfully with its students rather than just consult to inform about cost of rents and the fact that it's planning on demolishing the most affordable accommodation on campus and how the union needs to be involved in the East Slope redevelopment project. But yeah, basically those are two of one of the biggest welfare issues on campus, and the university has the decision and the choice to support the welfare of its students, and they do have the money to do that, because I feel like we all know that, and I'm glad that there are some presidential candidates that I've seen are talking about increasing transparency and education candidates as well in university spending, because I feel like that's how we'll get to the bottom of it.
Okay, thank you. Same question again to you, Emily. If the university offered to double the amount of support service provision, but the cost of this would be increased rents on campus, would this be acceptable?
So I feel like I've got quite a similar answer to the other two candidates. Rent is already far too high. Students are expected to pay up to £148 per week for their accommodation, and maintenance loans just simply don't cover the cost of the increasing cost of living. So not being able to afford sort of things like food and transport and your educational materials on top of the price of rent can have a really devastating effect on someone's well-being, and could lead to increased pressure on support services as it was. However, we do really need to expand support services. If I was welfare officer, I'd really push for more counselling appointments, so we'd have less waiting times. People don't have to wait for weeks and weeks before they can see a counsellor. And also I'd like to set up a mental health peer support group, so people who have maybe finished their counselling sessions or just need some extra support on top of that can have support in that environment. But I think it's really important to remember, as we said, we already pay thousands and thousands of pounds per year to attend university. So the university does have the money to increase support and needs to do so, but that money is within the cost that we pay to attend university. So yeah, if I was elected welfare officer, I would campaign for both a freeze in rent and also an expansion of support services.
Or how do you think you would campaign for things like, or achieve things like shorter waiting times for counselling?
So I think the university really needs to listen to the opinions of its students. So there's been many feedback given by students. I want to get loads of students behind this movement. So sort of petitions, sort of campaigns like massive protests in the Library Square. Just really want to raise the profile of a campaign to increase support services and get everyone's feedback involved. Get everyone involved.
Okay, thank you. Well, it's now time for your individual questions. So let's start with you, Rihanna. What alternative ways of assessment would you encourage and why?
Well, basically, the reason why I put this on my manifesto is because a lot of the work I've been doing recently is to do with the new reasonable adjustments process which the university has, which is for students who have disabilities, registered disabilities. And there's been this sort of formation of a reasonable adjustments panel that doesn't quite work in a lot of different ways, and it's not great. And the problems come from the fact that most modes of assessment are exam-based, and these aren't good for people's well-being in general. They cause a lot of stress, and just regardless of whether or not you have a physical disability or mental health problems, they're not really the best ways of assessment. And as far as I'm aware, the university has on paper about 50 modes of assessment, but we only use about 4. So there are things like vivas where you can sort of speak your essays to a lecturer, and also trying to increase things like presentations, but also working with students individually to suit the modes of assessment to them individually, especially students with disabilities.
Okay, thank you. Emily, here is your individual question. Explain what a liberation group coalition would entail.
Great. So we're really lucky at Sussex to have some really, really great liberation groups. So, for example, I've worked quite a lot with the LGBTQ Society. I'm currently the LGBTQ rep. But what I envision for a Liberations Coalition would be a maybe monthly meetup where everyone who either belongs to a liberation group or identifies, for example, as a woman, as a person of colour, a person with disabilities, or a person who's LGBTQ can come together and can discuss the issues that affect them. And I feel like it would be a really important way to improve communication between these groups, because there's so many things that we do. For example, I was involved in organising LGBTQ History Month this year, and so many events that we put on could really be improved by sort of input from every single liberation group. So I think it would be a really great way to improve communication, to work together in solidarity, and also to improve communication between liberation groups and the Students' Union itself. So the Students' Union should be working really closely with liberation groups and organise events throughout the year that really reflect what students want.
How do you think you would get the student body in general to sort of embrace this type of intersectionality?
Well, I'd work really closely. So we're going to have, instead of reps this year, we're going to have part-time liberation officers. So I'd like to work really closely with them, go around the societies, try and get everyone involved, and I think just really promote that this is really a really powerful tool for change. That's what I think.
Okay, thank you. Jamal, here is your individual question. You say in your manifesto that you would end co-op's monopoly on campus. How do you propose that you would do this?
Well, the co-op on campus earns the most profit, and I feel like they exploit international students who don't know where else to shop, so they go to the one on campus, and they have higher prices than any other store on any of their other stores. If you go into town, it's much cheaper. So I would do this by challenging them on lowering their prices or saying we would replace you. I know Co-op is an ethical store, but at the same time we're students, we're broke, so they shouldn't be overcharging us in this way.
How do you propose you would try to challenge them?
A boycott maybe, just tell people not to shop there for a while, tell people about alternatives. We could even get people with cars doing runs into town and bringing shopping into uni. That's basically it.
Okay, well, thank you. Here is your topic for discussion. Please take 2 minutes to discuss the following topic. What's the most concerning cost that students face, and how would you address this?
I would say it's the cost of life, and basically I believe that the drugs on campus are unsafe, and we need to deal with this by selling drug testing kits so people can test their powder purity. I don't believe in the UK we have a sensible policy towards drugs, and to deal with this, I believe that if drugs were regulated, then it would be okay, but they're not. So we need to take it into our own hands to test our drugs and see what they like. They do it in Denmark, they do it in other countries. I'll let my other people guys respond.
I say another really big cost is the cost of transport. So obviously our campus is located quite a bit away from Brighton in the main town where lots of our students live. So it's really essential that people can travel cheaply and efficiently into campus. I know a lot of other candidates have been talking about this, but I think some really great work has been done this year on trying to encourage the use of bikes. For example, like the Recycle Bike Cooperative is a really great idea, and I'd like to really get more students involved in that. Also, some candidates before were talking about bringing back the Big Lemon bus. So the Big Lemon bus is a really sustainable mode of transport, and I think it's potentially a way that we could offer cheaper transport to students.
I'd have to agree with Emily. I think that the cost of transport in Brighton is really expensive. Last year on my manifesto I had a pledge to bring in travel subsidies for first generation scholars, and that's something I've been working on all year in the office steering group, which is the Office for Fair Access, and we're coming to sort of the end of our negotiation, and hopefully by September, for all students whose family income is below £25,000, I've put a proposal forward, so hopefully we'll have a full year travel grant for all of those students. So that's kind of negating the sort of and mitigating the worst effects of, you know, transport poverty. I also would agree that we need to continue the work on Keep It Wheel and encouraging cycling and alternative modes of transport, but also, you know, bearing in mind that students with disabilities can't always get involved in those things. And in addition to that, I would say housing and accommodation, and yeah, as we said before, the university is not helping with that. So, you know, continuing to lobby for more affordable and acceptable accommodation on campus, and working in the private rented sector to sort of tackle the costs of living for students. I've also got a thing on my manifesto about lobbying the university to act as a guarantor for international students, because sometimes they have to pay up to 6 or 8 months rent in advance just because they don't have a UK-based guarantor. Same for students who are UK-based but care leavers, or, you know, for any other different reasons because of the family income. So by introducing that scheme, hopefully that should also take a burden off some students who are sort of in the worst positions.
Emily or Jamal, do you have any sort of opinions on international students and housing and accommodation fees?
When it comes to rent, I think we should have like a opt-out scheme, so everyone's part of the Sussex University Housing Association or something, and we can blacklist landlords and properties from there. Because at the moment, like the house I moved in at the moment, it's disgusting. There's mold everywhere. The landlord's not about, and people like him should be blacklisted. That property should be blacklisted, and people should be advised not to live there.
Yeah, like on a similar way, I think that Sussex Student Lettings is a really important part of the uni, and that can be really helpful to students. I think we should really try to expand that, get more properties on Sussex Student Lettings, so that when people go and they don't see, oh, just a couple of houses, not much to choose from. I'd like that to be a really like viable option and the first option for students, so they don't have to go and deal with horrible estate agents, lettings agents. Yeah, that'd be really good.
Okay, well, thank you all for your time. Let's now meet our round 2 candidates applying to be your next welfare officer.
If elected as welfare officer, I'm hoping to campaign for a more diverse campus culture with events, coordinating events, promoting diversity on campus. I'm also hoping to arrange a positive body image campaign and events leading up to that. I want to campaign for refugee scholarships for university, and also for an accountability service for landlords. If you're adamant for better welfare, please vote Leah Adamson.
Well, we're joined in the studio now with Olive Condy and Leah Adamson. Well, let's get started with the questions. First off, Leah, this is the question for both of you, but if you'd like to answer first. If the university offered to double the amount of support service provision, but the cost of this would be increased rents on campus, would this be acceptable?
Personally, I think that it's not really about the amount of services that are provided on campus, but about the quality of these services. So we can increase the quality of services and support for students on campus so that we reach more people through developing the channels of awareness and access for students. And I think that's primarily what we should focus on. I feel like the problem with a lot of student services on campus is the way in which they are advertised. And students need more accessibility to these services even after they've used them, so they need more follow-up and things like that. I found, like, personally, that's what I've needed when I've gone to the Student Life Centre to talk about, like, dyslexia and things like that. I think rent on campus is already, like, hella expensive anyway, so we do not need to put that up. And especially after the demolition of East Slope goes through, that's going to really affect people. This in turn like marginalises students, which just isn't acceptable at all. And I don't think that students would react well to a major increase in rent, especially with those from low-income families. As I said before, it just marginalises people, which just isn't fair on the whole uni experience. The quality of support services are so important to campus, and we should definitely put more into increasing the quality of these support services, but this shouldn't be at the expense of students at all.
Okay, thank you. Well, same question to you, Olive. If the university offered to double the amount of support service provision, but the cost of this would be increased rents on campus, would this be acceptable?
Well, money is a big thing for students. We do whinge about it a lot, but if you look at the amount of debt that people get into, last year the average amount for one person once they've graduated was 44 grand, which makes me want to vomit a little bit. So really, I don't think that increasing our living costs is really going to help student well-being. That doesn't really make any sense to me. I mean, debt is something that doesn't just happen, whilst you're a student. It follows you around afterwards, and we do to some extent have, a duty to help people's well-being, not just when they're a student, but also afterwards a student, after they've graduated. And like you were saying, accommodation is, what was it you said? Hella high. Hella high. And it's also high off campus. We're one of the most expensive cities in terms of rented accommodation. So a lot of the time our maintenance zone doesn't really cover that, which is not very great. So just raising prices of accommodation doesn't really do much. It's not really the answer. I don't think it's that we have a lack of money. I mean, if you think about our fees, that's tripled, and our services, I would say, have stayed the same. So maybe it's more of an issue of money management. If we're just, upping the living costs, we're only making education possible and feasible and accessible for a certain amount of people. So what does it matter if, they have better services, if we're kind of damaging our duty to have equal opportunity for further education for everyone?
Okay, well, thank you. We're going to move now on to the questions about your personal manifestos. So let's start with you again, Leah. What kind of events would you organise to celebrate diverse campus culture?
Oh, see, that's the question that I wanted. That's great. I think that we have a problem in Sussex campus is that we have a lot of minorities here who are underrepresented, and we saw this week with the Holly Festival how excited everyone got to celebrate a different culture and to get involved. And I think that's what we need more of. We need more events which advertise this as well, where we have existing societies like ACS who are putting on really, really good events. Like they have their culture festival in a few weeks, and that's going to be such an amazing event. I was looking at it online. And I just think that there needs to be more promotion of things like that, more promotion of people getting up and showing exactly what their culture is about and making sure that everyone is integrated in that. So it's not just people from that culture who are going to see that, but everyone should be involved and everyone should be invited, because I think that is such an important part of university, is to get to know more people and to get to know and understand different cultures and understand where people come from. And that's such an important and valuable thing which you're going to learn.
Do you think you would then organise more events or just promote the ones that are already existing?
I think do both. I think we've already got a great platform of events that are going on which aren't being advertised as much, but also we need to do more. I think that especially during months like the LGBTQ month or Black History Month, there needs to be something that's going on like the whole time, and that's being promoted, and that's more exciting, and things which people can actually get excited about, like showcases and things that people can get involved in as well.
Thank you. Well, Olive, here is your question now. What are the hidden costs at Sussex and how would you tackle them?
Sorry, what was that?
What are the hidden costs at Sussex, and how would you tackle them?
The hidden costs. Well, I think people will have problems budgeting. There's a lot of things when you go to university you think I'm going to spend money on this. There's like the basics, food, obviously accommodation. But transport, I'd say, is a big one, especially if you live off campus. It's very expensive, even though we have a green local council. It's just very expensive generally to get around. I mean, also just little things, little everyday things, I think kind of add up, especially just things like, as silly as it sounds, washing. Like, that's expensive, but it's a necessity, and it's something that you can't avoid doing. And just things like that build up.
Well, how do you think you would tackle these hidden costs then?
That is a good question. I'm going to have to think about that one.
Would you like
Make
to?
them cheaper.
Shall we move on to the discussion topic then?
Why not? Let's do that.
Okay, well, we are going to give you 2 minutes now to discuss this topic. What's the most concerning cost that students face, and how would you address this?
I think that one of the most concerning costs, as you were saying, is like those hidden costs like laundry and just transport and things like that. I mean, rent is obviously a big issue on campus, and it's gonna carry on going up, and we need to make sure that it's more a fixed rate, and so that people can afford to go, because student loans don't cover that, maintenance loans just don't cover that. It's a struggle to get through with that. But also there needs to be more services at uni, like the laundrette, which could be cheaper. I know that I was fortunate, I lived in Brighthelm, and so people would always be coming to my house because they couldn't afford to do their laundry, and so it's just little things like that.
Yeah, and even just things like when you were talking about the maintenance loan, I mean, I don't even know how they calculate it, if I'm honest with you, but just if you get into the private rented sector once you get off campus, I mean, things like, you put down a deposit, that's money, you put down first month rent. I'm lucky enough to be in a position, I'm sorted in that case because my parents have money, but not everyone's parents have money. That's a big hidden cost, and that stacks up, and landlords in Brighton, I think, are ridiculous. By the end of it, they take like a big chunk out of your deposit for what I think is, they get very easy money, let's put it that way.
Yeah. So would you agree then that accommodation costs would be the most concerning for students?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Especially in Brighton as well. It's so expensive around here just to live. I mean, compared to many of the people who go to university up north, it's so much cheaper. And this is definitely something that is a problem in Brighton. But I think that could be eased by the costs on campus and by transport. I mean, paying £3 for a bus is a lot of money a day. And I think that needs to be reduced even more.
And even that's the reduced amount.
Yeah, I know.
It was more before then.
What would both of your ideas be on addressing these issues then?
I think that we have a lot of power in campus that we don't realise that we have. So there's a lot of lobbying things that we can do to make sure that you actually go to the university and things like that, to work together as a union and as a students to realise that we can actually make change.
There was a lot of good work about boycotting the buses. Obviously, there was a steady rise in bus ticket prices. When I was a freshman, I think they were about £2. And there's quite a lot of work about, just boycotting it, looking at other modes of transport. Cycling is, great. And that puts pressure on, companies that are, their main source of income is students, I would say. We're a big part of their...
We don't realise how powerful we actually are, I think.
Together we are one.
Okay, well, thank you both. Well, moving on, let's introduce now the third and final round of candidates vying for the position of welfare officer.
Rents without consulting with students first, because obviously that's something that impacts everyone, but support services, like not everyone accesses them. So so I'd definitely consult first. I think you can improve attitudes and you can improve well-being without having to use so much funding. Obviously, like counselling is a service that I think everyone like should have access to. Waiting times right now are 2 months, which is on average, which I think is totally unacceptable. So any improvement on that is good. But there's other things you can do, such as education and training, and that would reduce the need for services just by having open conversation. And I'd also argue that the university can take money to fund support services from other sources, not just rent.
Well, again, the same question to you. If the university offered to double the amount of support service provision, but the cost of this would be increased rents on campus, would this be acceptable?
Well, I think that this is a false choice. There's at the moment a considerable amount of money currently being improperly spent by the university, and that money could be and should be better spent. For example, the Badger just published an article this week revealing that over the last 2 years, university management executives received £60,000 in expenses. That kind of spending should be reallocated into important areas such as support services, instead of putting more financial pressure on students by increasing rents.
Okay, how do you propose you would sort of implement these changes in funding?
Which changes?
If you're trying to move funding from things like administrative fees to things like support service?
Well, that's just a position that the student union would have to take. It would have to basically make a more public awareness about the fact that there's an increasing amount of income that's being centralized into university management, and that's coming at the expense of both the incomes of faculty and other members of non-academic staff, and also areas that affect students directly.
Okay, well, let's move on to the questions about your individual manifestos now. Becky, what is it about wellbeing events that you think prevents them from being appealing to all genders, and how would you overcome this?
Well, I think that I would have to definitely ask, and consult with, the diverse group of students, why certain groups are being not so responsive and not so engaging. That's not something that I can, decide by myself. But definitely positive action and reaching out in ways that are relevant to more people. And I can't think of specific examples, but yeah, consulting with groups of students and asking what they would need and what would work for them. Yeah. Okay, thank you. What are the issues with the current website that you would resolve?
Well, at the moment, the university has a website which lays out a number of welfare-related services that are available to students, but it doesn't directly let students know where those services are or when they are. And sometimes it just has an email address that students have to email. And I think that actually puts a lot of people off and it prevents people from being able to access those services. So what I would do is I'd create a separate website that would have a timetable which would let students know exactly where those services are being held and how they can access them.
Okay, thank you. Well, as with the other rounds, I'm now going to give you 2 minutes to discuss the following topic. What's the most concerning cost that students face, and how would you address this?
Most concerning cost. I'd go back to counselling. I'd say that free counselling is not accessible right now, as it should be. If you want to talk to someone in a reasonable amount of time, you have to pay £40 an hour for someone external, and that is unacceptable. So so more access to free counselling is what I'd say. Yeah, what about you?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I think maybe we could put more money into counselling because, like you mentioned, there's a large waiting time, something like 2 months for people to be able to access counselling. And that should be something that more money should go into. Also, maybe there's one of my policies that I've proposed is to set up a free telephone helpline running 7 days a week from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. during term time, which is similar to a service called Samaritans, but perhaps slightly less intense. Students would be able to call in any time to discuss anything. And they have that service already at 34 other universities in the UK. And I think that if we had that kind of service here, that would alleviate some of the pressure on counselling services, which are under a lot of stress at the moment.
Well, in terms of the costs that students have to pay for, so different aspects of life and of like lifestyle expenses, which one do you think is the most concerning?
For lifestyle, like maybe rent. I'm not sure like what you mean by lifestyle, but like...
So it's like cost of living.
Yeah, cost of living. Okay, like rent prices are like through the ceiling, and they really do impact on people's well-being and welfare. And there's like people don't have like nice, healthy, warm spaces to be in as a student. I think that's really sad. Which is why one of my points was to have more relaxation spaces on campus to kind of combat this, so that people do have these spaces, regardless of how much rent they can afford and their financial situation. Yeah.
Do you have any opinions on sort of the most concerning living costs that students have to face?
To be honest, I would largely agree with what Becky said on that issue.
Okay, well, thank you both for your time. We've heard now from all of the candidates running for 3 of the 6 full-time elected officer roles, and we are now halfway through the show. Well, don't forget to keep sending in your tweets under the hashtag Sussex Elections, and keep updated with candidate question time through our Facebook and Twitter at UniTV Live. We'll be taking a short break, but keep watching to see what the remaining candidates are up to now. We'll be back to hear from the rest of them after the break, but right now, let's go to Max in the green room. Max, how's it going?
We're live. Thank you, Christine. Great job so far. Well done to all the candidates who have taken part, and good luck to those still to come. Remember to vote in these elections. If you haven't already, follow UniTV on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. In this 10-minute break, we're going to be asking our candidates some quickfire questions, starting with, can you summarise your campaign in one word?
Empowerment.
Community.
Fairness.
Inclusivity.
Passionate.
Umbrella.
Meow.
You.
Change. A fight.
Winning. Super.
Equality.
Unity.
Equality.
Groundbreaking.
Togetherness.
Representation. Extensive. Democracy.
Simple.
Relevant.
Communication.
Palm trees.
Championing.
Empowerment.
Okay, so now we're going to go back down. Next question, East Slope or Falmer Bar?
East Slope.
East Slope.
Palmer Bar.
Yes.
Room 76.
East Slope.
East Slope.
East Slope. Farmer Bar.
Farmer Bar.
East Slope.
Hi, Becca and Emma.
East Slope.
East Slope.
Oh, East Slope, definitely East Slope.
Oh, wait.
East Slope.
Yeah.
Farmer Bar.
East Slope, mate.
East Slope.
Farmer Bar.
I live in East Slope, so East Slope all the way.
Falmer. Both.
Falmer, vegan cheese.
Definitely East Slope.
East Slope die.
Farmer Slope.
And no one said IDS Bar. So, next question, what is the most important issue for you about the university in these elections?
For me, it's just talking to people and expressing...
One word. Sorry, just one word.
Fairness.
Communication.
Money.
Equality.
Hidden academic cost hyphenated. Disabilities.
University expansion.
Creativity.
Quality.
Management bastards.
Cultural awareness. Inclusivity.
Mental health as one word.
Representation.
Accessibility.
Evolution.
Community.
Balance union.
Cost of living.
Governance. Representation.
Promotion of events.
Active dialogue.
Our undergraduate education.
Reaching out to people who need it.
Proper support for everybody.
Okay, some good answers there. Not quite one word, but here we go. Next question, cats or dogs?
Dogs.
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 Cats.
Cats.
Definitely cats.
Lenin had cats. Fair enough. Dogs.
Cats then?
Yes.
Dogs.
Dogs.
Dogs, of course.
Definitely dogs.
Cat dog, like that show, Cat Dog. Anyone seen Cat Dog?
Cats if they're fluffy.
But what about dogs if they're fluffy?
That's okay too. As long as they're fluffy.
100% cats.
Equality of the species.
Get.
Cats.
I'll be getting a family of cats in Farmer House.
Cats, but also the de-stress dogs.
The library cats.
Dogs.
Dogs.
Hamsters. What about hamsters?
Dogs.
Okay, cool. Next question. What is your favourite building on campus?
Library.
The meeting house.
East Slope Bar.
The meeting house. Preston, loved doing Magic Green and Potter Cabin.
Farmhouse.
East Slope Bar.
Derby Cafe.
Arts B.
Meeting house.
Freeman Centre.
Eastlope Bar.
Eastleigh Bar.
Artsy, go global studies. Freeman for the free coffee. Meeting house for the free tea.
Their shoe shop because I work there.
Meeting house.
Farmer House.
The library.
That's so boring.
I know.
I'll say.
Farmer House.
Arts B.
Fulton A.
Fulton A? Why?
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it? It's comfortable.
Fair enough.
University counselling services.
Piano rooms in Arts B.
Okay, cool. Next question. Do you sing in the shower?
Sometimes.
Absolutely.
Definitely a bit of Kylie.
Who doesn't?
I try.
Yes. Many, many times.
Am I the only person here who doesn't sing in the shower?
You're lying to yourself if you say you're not.
Exclusively Disney.
Favourite Disney song?
Let it go.
Yes, I can't follow that.
Sing and dance.
Yes, at the top of my voice. Every time.
Yeah, I'm just with you, like Mulan. As long as it's Mulan.
Yeah?
Yeah.
No other Disney films? You're
Doesn't need to be one. Doesn't need to be one. It's just Mulan, in my view.
Only ever Mulan. Only ever Mulan.
There's a theme going on here.
Inspiration to us all.
I can't even remember, to be quite honest. No.
You can't remember if you sing in the shower or not?
No.
That means you do. You're just hiding it.
Like an angel.
Don't have time.
You don't have time?
Yeah, of course I want to enjoy the taking shower, not singing.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be fair to my housemates.
So you do if they're not in?
I do a lot of things when they're not in.
Whitney Houston greatest hits every day.
A whole lot of Beyonce. You can't stop me singing anytime, let alone in the shower.
I think I can rap.
You think you can rap?
I can't.
Do you want to give us an example? No?
I knew that was coming.
I must have been known to indulge in rap, a little bit of Shaggy, a little bit of Azalea Banks. I'm not going to do it now.
You sure? Just one or two?
No one wants to hear that. No one wants to hear that.
I dance in the shower.
You dance in the shower? How'd you do that?
I'll show you next time. No.
Next. Okay, well, this has got exciting. So, I can't remember my next question now. So, next question, on a more serious tone. Do you think a strike action is more effective, or would you prefer negotiations and meetings?
I prefer starting with negotiations meetings. If it doesn't work, going for strike.
Strikes are usually the result of negotiations not working.
Negotiations.
Sometimes strikes are completely necessary.
A bit of both.
Exactly the same as what everyone said.
Both are appropriate, and we should consider both.
Negotiations and strike if that doesn't work.
Negotiations, of course.
I find people with power don't really like to negotiate, so I'm going to have to go for a strike.
Negotiations, then strike.
Strike is the last resort.
I don't want to be the French stereotype, but strike.
Both for inside and out action.
Yeah, kind of agree with Jules, both, but sometimes a strike is necessary to actually be listened to.
Yeah, negotiation, but usually doesn't work, so strike has to be the answer.
I think whichever action the people who are interested want to do is the best for them.
False dichotomy, negotiation first, strike after. Change always.
Yeah, definitely start with negotiations, see what happens.
You're going to say strike, aren't you, Callum?
Oh, you think that? Negotiation, then strike. Make the strike big.
I think negotiation, I think it needs to be a referendum first to see what the students actually want there.
An officer should be representative, so whatever the student wants. Negotiation, then probably strike.
negotiation to start and then see what happens.
A bit of both, mainly focusing on negotiation, I think.
Both until change happens as much as possible.
I also think both are important.
So basically a consensus there. Next question, what is everyone's favourite movie?
Forrest Gump.
Raising Arizona.
Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire.
Why so specific? Why not number 5?
Lots of questions. I don't like number 5, it's not the best. I like Goblet of Fire, it's theatrical, it's good, yeah.
The Big Lebowski.
Fight Club.
The Lion King.
Taken already, Fight Club.
I've always quite liked Treasure Planet.
Great film.
Tangled.
Aww, there's a Disney theme here, isn't there?
Muppet Christmas Carol.
Fruitvale Station. If you haven't seen it, everyone, it's a great film. Parent Trap.
12 Monkeys. Everyone watch it.
Have you watched the TV series?
No, I haven't.
It's meant to be good.
Lord of the Rings.
Which one?
Don't make me do that.
You have to pick.
It's so hard. I don't know.
Lord of the Rings with Mulan as Frodo.
That's a film I want to see.
Anything Disney. Don't make me pick.
Top 3?
Little Mermaid, Hunchback of Notre Dame, Lion King.
I'm going to go for a recent release and go with Pride.
Gladiator.
Great film.
See no evil, hear no evil.
Sounds intense.
Paris, je t'aime.
Cool.
If I'm on a good day, The Graduate. On a bad day, The Room.
Despicable Me for the Minions.
Yeah. Great film.
Labyrinth, starring David Bowie.
Oh, yeah, classic.
I was going to say Gladiator, but Good Will Hunting.
Belleville Rendezvous, because it's got art and bikes.
Forrest Gump.
I've had that twice. I'm quite disappointed that nobody said Star Wars. So, thanks for all these answers now. We're heading back to the studio now. Over to you, Christine.
Well, welcome back. You're watching Candidate Question 2015 with me, Christine Hu. We'll be hearing shortly from those running for your undergraduate education officer, but first we have some tweets from all of you watching the show. At Hannah Stewart 00 says, "Keep it simple, vote Johnny, hashtag Sussex elections, at Johnny for activities." Charlotte Gunton at Lo and Behold tweets, "I don't know who this Emily Pinto is, but she seems very reasonable. I know where I'm placing my vote, hashtag progress with Pinto." And Cal McLaughlin tweets, "James for activities, Rihanna for welfare, and Bethan for undergraduate education. Heart Dream Team, hashtag Sussex elections." Okay, well, back to the show. The undergraduate education officer represents the undergraduate student body in their education needs and progression, supporting academic representatives and acting for improvement with regard to learning and teaching. Let's introduce the first round of candidates.
Hi, my name's Aaron and I'm running to be your undergraduate education officer next year. The main points I'd like to work on if elected are increasing the number of ebooks available in the library to allow more students to have access to core materials for their course, to establish an automatic book renewal system in the library, and to increase the number of information events for postgraduate study earlier in undergraduate study to decrease the stress put on final year students. So please, vote for me to be your undergraduate education officer next year. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Alexandra Crandall and I'm running for undergraduate education officer. If elected, I have 3 priorities. The first is working on the library, expanding on the core collection, making more copies of core texts available in the library, and making more resources available online. Second is assessments and feedback, stopping late timetabling, clashes, and leaving time between assessments. My third priority is representation, introducing joint honour reps, and maintaining transparency between committees and the students they represent.
Welcome to the studio, Alexandra Crandall and Aaron Palmer. Well, you're both running for undergraduate education officer. So let's begin with a set question for this category. Aaron, if you could answer first. The Students' Union should support university staff in all industrial action, such as strikes or marking boycotts. Do you agree with this?
Okay, so obviously university staff deserve to have their voice heard as well, just like students. And I feel it's really important that the Students' Union makes students aware of issues with staff as well. and then we can back the staff to support them. However, industrial action can be quite disruptive for students. Strikes decrease the amount of contact time for the time they're running. I know a lot ran last year. And then marking boycotts can really affect students receiving their feedback and being able to progress in their studies. So what I would aim to do is to, for the Students' Union to really push mainly higher management to support their staff more, communicate with their staff, get the students behind the system, but don't let there be a bad effect for the students. Push it towards higher management to take that role. It's their responsibility in the long run.
Okay, well, same question to you, Alexandra. The Students' Union should support university staff in all industrial actions such as strikes or marking boycotts. Do you agree?
We were discussing this topic earlier this year at the Student Union Council meeting, which I sit on as an English rep. And I'll say to you what I said then. It's imperative that the Student Union primarily reflects the opinions of its students. And based on the feedback that I got from this year, the majority of students supported the causes and reasons behind our lecturers striking and getting involved with the boycotts. I mean, what student doesn't want a sustainable pension scheme for the lecturers? So yeah, as a result, yeah, the Students' Union should definitely support that. However, as Aaron mentioned before, we don't want this having a detrimental effect on our education. So before this action takes place, I feel like students need to be notified in advance. Assessment deadlines should be modified accordingly, and supplementary teaching lessons, whether or not that takes the form of lectures, seminars, workshops, should be organised. That way faculty are able to take political actions for the treatments they deserve, and that we believe that they deserve, and undergraduate education doesn't suffer as a result. I'd argue that the issue with the last big marking strike that we had was just a lack of communication between students and faculty, not the cause itself.
Well, if there were supplementary classes, does this count still as being part of the strike then?
Certainly, yes. I think the main thing with these strikes and boycotts is having them between certain days. It's a certain time period, and I remember when I was getting feedback for this topic, students were as upset as the teachers, in fact. It was a pretty level playing field because the teachers were saying, particularly to finalists, we know you have assessments, we don't want this to have a detrimental effect on you. I really think everyone would be for this.
Okay, well, thank you. Let's move on now onto the questions about your personal manifestos. Alexandra, let's start with you again. Are 2 sets of module feedback questionnaires necessary, and why?
I've been talking about this in Library Square today, and when I put this point forward on my manifesto, I was thinking about it in terms of the system we already currently have. I'm aware that some modules are split into 2 sections, with some lecturers teaching in the first half, some in the second half, with drastically different content, and I feel like having those 2 questionnaires would reflect both sides of that. However, the point of the midterm module evaluation questionnaires is also to target the modules which have a common theme running through them. So I feel like both types of module, university-wide, because I've been a rep for School of English, I've been very, very careful about trying to have policies which include the teaching types of art students, science students, social science students. If we ran it and we decided there was too much red tape, of course, keep one. It's not set in stone, but I want it based on student feedback.
Okay, fair enough. Well, Aaron, here is your question. How do you plan on achieving better Wi-Fi on campus?
Okay, so this is a theme which has been coming up many years, and especially over the past couple of years when we have an increase in students coming to the university. Having the decrease in Wi-Fi is really not good for everyone's study. If we're going to the library and it's very busy, especially around lunch times, trying to use the computers is, you can't find one. It's really difficult. So people are taking their laptops in, iPads, mobile devices, trying to connect to the internet, and it's just not happening. So obviously, I haven't had the experience in the university to know who I would talk to. I definitely try and find out who our provider is, where it comes from, who manages it on the university grounds. Speak with them, try and find the funding to push for this increase in Wi-Fi coverage and quality. Speak to whoever necessary to really push that, because it's really important for students to be able to access internet at all times, particularly, like I said, with the library being so busy, people are taking more mobile devices in, which I think is better in the long run as well. People like to work in other places, not necessarily the library. And if you go to certain places around campus, the Wi-Fi coverage doesn't reach. And I saw recently a survey conducted on first years about the information technology service on campus. And one of the main points they raised was the Wi-Fi coverage, so I thought it was a really important point to raise. I know I get frustrated about it as well, so yeah, definitely want to improve that.
Okay, great. Well, we're now going to give you some time to discuss the following topic, which is relevant to your prospective position amongst yourselves. So this is the topic. UK students should not have to pay as much for their degrees as overseas students. Discuss.
Wow.
Wow, okay.
So obviously international students have to pay a lot more than what we have to pay, I think. And there's been a current, Beth and I has been working on it, decreasing the increase in tuition fees for international students over the time. It's ridiculous. Why should they have to pay more than we're paying as well? But then you could raise the question or lead it into, why does Scotland have free education and then we're charged for that as well? So I don't know what you have to say about that.
I don't know, I was quite shocked at the phrasing of the question, the idea that anybody should pay more than anybody for education. I mean, I'm passionate about free education, so the idea that anyone has to pay for education is already a problem to me. And the idea that anyone, based on where they come from or their background, having that affect how much they have to pay for an education, that's baffling to me.
Yeah, and everyone's receiving the same level of education. No one's receiving more support, more tuition because of the fees they're paying. So really a decrease to the same level would be absolutely perfect, obviously, and the push for free education is great. We can really make a difference, especially if it's coming in that nationwide campaign now, to decrease tuition fees. I know there's a lot of talk with the upcoming elections, a decrease in tuition fees, and a lot of people support that. And I think it's really important we really get onto that and then make it a set level for everyone, regardless of where they come from, like you said.
Yeah, while we still have tuition fees, they have to be equal for everybody. No one's valued over anyone else, and I feel like having some kind of difference in fees depending where you come from reinforces an idea that people are inherently different because of where they come from, and that's not okay.
Okay, well, thank you both for your time. We'll be bringing in now the second round of candidates running for undergraduate education officer. But first, let's hear a little bit about them.
Hi, I'm Becca, and I'm re-running to be your undergrad education officer. You should vote for me because I'm going to work to remove hidden academic costs by cutting library fines and introducing free printing across campus. I want to ensure that international students' tuition fees are capped and that we have more transparency around this issue. I also want to increase computer provision on campus by expanding the laptop loan scheme. So vote Beckham for undergrad education because the hunt's not over.
Hi, I'm Radek, and I'm your best choice for the undergraduate education officer. I would like to really encourage you to vote. It's really important that you, as a student, do get engaged and really look into us candidates that are putting ourselves out there. Personally, I would like to really endorse people like Ken for welfare and Lindsay for activities. So please do consider them and do consider giving them your vote. But also, don't forget, vote Radek for a radical change.
We're joined now by our second round of candidates running for undergraduate education officer, Bethan Hunt and Radek Oros. Well, let's start with the questioning, and let's start with you, Radek. Here's the set question for your category. The Students' Union should support university staff in all industrial actions such as strikes or marking boycotts. Do you agree?
I strongly believe that that the ethical obligation of Students' Union is to defend and support not only students but also our staff, namely porters, cleaners, security people, but also our tutors. And that's why I would definitely and resolutely endorse this action. I would like to see Students' Union not only being active but maybe even being at the forefront of such actions. However, at the same time, I would like to be very careful and make sure that as a member of the Students' Union, we act from a grounded, clear-headed space and not reactive and impulsive. especially in relation to certain pressures, ideological or political. So I would say yes, but I see a problem in this sentence, the way it's framed, this question, using the word all industrial action. I think it really depends on so many different factors that they would have to be first considered, critically evaluated, and on that basis endorse that action or not.
Okay, thank you. Same question to you, Bethan. Would you like me to repeat it or?
Yes, please.
Okay, so the Students' Union should support university staff in all industrial actions such as strikes or marking boycotts. Do you agree?
I would agree with kind of Radek's last point. I think that we should take it on a case-by-case basis. I don't think we should have a blanket. We will always support the university staff on industrial action. I think this year we saw a UCU marking boycott and the Students' Union supported that. But really importantly, we got a democratic mandate, and we did that by taking it to Union Council. And this is made up of student reps, we have our liberation officers, our part-time officers, and we have people from societies. So we made sure that we had a good mix and sure that students were happy with this. And it was really important that we did that because we saw the marking boycott suspend and it ended very, very quickly. And I think that's because we got student support on this issue. And I think it's really important that we communicate why we are supporting industrial action. So students, of course, they're going to be frustrated if they can't go to their lectures, if their feedback is delayed, because that's so vital to their education. But it's so important that we communicate why we're doing this. And I think some people would say students' unions shouldn't get involved in industrial action because we're here solely for students. But we are an academic community, and if lecturers feel insecure, as they did with the marking boycott, because their pay was threatened to be withheld if they took part in it, then how are our lecturers going to give us the best education we can if they don't feel secure in their own workplace?
Okay, thank you. So let's now move on to the questions about your individual manifestos. Bethan, what is the top hidden academic cost that you think affects students, and how would you address this?
I think it's a really difficult question because I think there's so many hidden academic costs. I wouldn't say that there was obviously there's tuition fees, but unfortunately I don't think we're going to be able to do anything about that. So I'd say that it's actually the accumulation of all these hidden academic costs. So it's obviously having to pay for your course textbooks, it's printing, it's all of these things. So as I've said in my manifesto, I want to work to introduce free printing, and I think some people would say that that's ambitious and that we can't do it. But we've seen the Students' Union bring in free printing this year, so we can use that to lobby the university. And we've also going to have 2-year groups on e-submissions next year, so that also means that they're not going to have to pay for that printing. And I also want to work on library fines as well. And we've seen universities abolish library fines in Sheffield, so we can definitely use that again to pressure the university.
Okay, well, Radek, could you explain to us what the Mindful Education Project is and how that would work?
So Mindful Education Project is basically idea that came to my mind when writing the manifesto. I'm a student of psychology and I've been for a long time interested in meditation practices. And to be honest, even though I'm not committed to any particular path, I've seen and experienced the benefits of embracing a bit more mindfulness in our lives. And I think this quality can be so universally applied that I do believe that applying these principles also to the way how we relate to our education would be quite progressive and quite radically new to what we have. So the whole project is based on this premise or this idea that the current paradigm we have is the more accumulation of information is somehow beneficial, is leading us forward. I believe it's not about accumulation of information, of facts. It's more about using those information and being able to work with them rather than to just accumulate more and more. So I believe mindfulness could be very helpful in this.
Are there any sort of examples that you would use in order to implement this sort of mentality?
So I think we are very lucky at Sussex. We've got so many different societies and people from different backgrounds. So I would like to bring together people that think differently, that think alternatively. And in practice, that would mean, for example, hosting it would be a year-long project consisting of workshops, different classes, external speakers invited to Sussex, hopefully experts in the field of mindfulness, education, and that'll be some part of it.
Okay, thank you. We're now going to give you some time to discuss the following topic. So this is a discussion topic. Do you agree or disagree that UK students should not have to pay as much for their degrees as overseas students?
I mean, we've done a lot of work on international students this year, and I think something that's really upsetting is that it seems that the university treat international students like cash cows. They don't have a limit on how they set their tuition fees, and this year they gave us the scaring variant that it might be between 5 and 8%, and I think that's disgusting, and I think that there is absolutely no right that international students are charged more than home students, and I think that's something we really need to work on. We've ensured that there's a cap this year, that's something, but it doesn't go kind of far enough for me to ensure that, you know, there's an equal footing.
I definitely agree with what Bethany said. I mean, I'm an international student myself, but somehow, because I was born in European Union, I pay the home fees. But that still doesn't make me feel like, you know, I should get comfortable with that and turn a sort of blind eye on what's happening to international overseas students. So I think we should definitely at least lobby for decrease in their fees as much as possible. That's for sure.
Okay, well, thank you both for your time. Thank you for all of our candidates running for undergraduate education officer. So let's move on now to meet your postgraduate education officer candidates. This role represents the postgraduate student body in their education needs and progression, supporting academic representatives and acting for improvement with regard to learning and teaching.
Hi, I'm Rose and I'm studying my Masters in Social Development. I want to be your postgraduate education officer because I believe that postgrad study should be accessible to everyone. I want to make this happen by campaigning for more funding for postgrad students, especially through continuing the campaign for free education and lobbying for a reduction in tuition fees. I also want to make postgrad study less isolating through the introduction of more socials and a postgraduate research society. I think that postgrad life should be fun and exciting as well as an enriching experience. If you agree with me, then vote Rose for a tailor-made education.
Hi, my name is Julia and I'm running for Postgraduate Education Officer. My overall goal is to create a strong, inclusive and supportive university for all postgraduates on campus, because I feel that compared to my undergraduate, we're sometimes excluded from democratic processes. For this, I want to create a strong, transparent and democratic decision-making process on campus. Secondly, I want to make sure that all PhD associate tutors are paid fairly. Finally, I want to create a strong mentoring scheme on campus within disciplines. So vote for me for a representative postgraduate voice on campus.
Juliet Grenville, Mohammed Adnan Sattar, and Rose Taylor, welcome to Candidate Question Time. Let's begin first with your set question. Juliet, if you'd like to answer first. So, levels of postgraduate student participation within the Students' Union have historically been lower than that of undergraduates. How would you address this?
Hi, thank you. First of all, I'm really happy this question came up because it's actually key to my campaign. I did my undergraduate here as well, and I do feel that comparing my undergraduate to my postgraduate, there's definitely a difference in level of inclusiveness at Sussex. This could be due to the fact that MAs are only here for a year, or due to PhD workload, or the fact that associate tutors have got lots of workload. So first of all, I'd like to really welcome and thank the SU for having this role so we can actually represent postgraduates properly. In terms of the problem, I think a lot of it is to do with communication. A lot of postgraduates don't know what the SU is about, especially if they've been out of education or they're international students. So what I want to do is create a better communication network on campus. So between the Postgraduate Association, student reps, which I don't think are used well enough on campus, and between me, so we can essentially just feed back information from the Students' Union to postgraduates and vice versa.
Okay, well, thank you. Mohammed, same question to you. Levels of postgraduate student participation within the Students' Union have historically been lower than that of undergraduates. How would you address this?
Yeah, I do think that for this there can be a multifaceted plan. First of all, I do think that there is need to promote the volunteerism in postgraduate students. I mean that there should be different voluntary activities related to different departments. For example, there should be different activities related to School of English, there should be different activities related to School of Politics, and etc. And another thing is that there is also need to create awareness in postgraduate student about the mandate of the student union, that student union has a value. If you will participate in the activities of the student union, of course, in the future prospect, it will be beneficial for your employment, for your jobs, and mean that your say in the student union is being heard, and it is also being transferred to the higher authorities as well. And then another strategy that can be is that there can be effective communication between postgraduate students and the student union. And for this, postgraduate representatives can be a very good window to communicate and to form a bridge between student union and the postgraduate students. And then the another thing is that so for students have concern, when they do come here, there should be an engagement between student union and students, so that there should be an effective relation between student union and the students before coming here.
Okay, thank you. Rose, again, the same question, if you would like me to repeat it. Okay.
So yeah, similar to what Jules said, I think it's really great that we've actually got a postgraduate education officer this year, because it's a huge step in the right direction to increasing the participation of postgrads into the Students' Union. But there's three kind of main ways that I'd want to increase this participation even further. So first of all, I'd set up a postgraduate research society, which would be a platform where postgrads could find others with similar research interests and potentially work together. And I think this would also help combat the isolation that postgraduate study can create. Second of all, I'd promote the buddy scheme that the Students' Union has already set up between postgrads and also between undergrads and postgrads, because I think that would help kind of bridge the gap between postgrads and the wider campus community. And finally, I'd do more socials for postgrads in the union bars and also in Brighton, because I think postgrads can often forget to actually have fun, and it's all study, study, study. So I think we need to remind them to take a break sometimes.
Okay, thank you. Let's now move on to questions about your personal manifestos. If we start with you, Mohammed. How do you plan to expand the student rep scheme?
Yeah, of course, I do think that, again, there's need to create awareness. I mean that in the students is that, for example, if you get involved in the student union, for example, then of course you will get experience regarding extracurricular activities, regarding the society, of course. So for these books of concern, it can be studied anywhere. So for international students have concern, why do they come here? Of course, due to its multicultural and multi-ethnic, and there are students from different nationalities, of course. That's why they do come here instead of studying in their own countries. Of course, and those students who do come here, I think the need is to tell them that, of course, you are in a multicultural university, you are in a multinational university. Therefore, that's why. So for extracurricular activities have concern, these are also as important as your studies. I mean that giving time to the library as important is also to give time to the extracurricular activities.
Okay, moving on. Rose, this is your question. What new social events for postgraduates would you introduce?
Well, as I said before, I'd want to create just more socials in the union bars where they can come along and meet other postgrads. I think it's important as well to start a kind of Freshers' Week, similar, obviously not the same as what first year's undergrads have, but with more just kind of social activities in the daytime and in the evening as well. And I think it's important that these be interdisciplinary as well, so you get to meet people from other courses. And yeah, I think definitely using the union bars to do this as like a hub where people can meet people. And then I think with the Postgraduate Research Society that I mentioned before as well, I think that I'd like that to have regular socials as well, so either weekly or fortnightly, where people can meet and just have a place to come and meet other postgrads and kind of like take your head out of studying for a little bit.
Okay, well finally, Juliet, how would you effectively lobby the university to increase library opening hours?
So I suppose part of this question I wouldn't know the answer to. I'm not an elective officer for the time being, so there's a part of it I wouldn't be able to do. But I suppose lobbying is quite a difficult thing to do. On one hand, you have to be very much within their paradigm, within how they wear things, so the kind of suit type people, but on the other hand, you do need to have a strong voice. So I suppose the best thing to do for that is to gain respect from library faculty and staff to do that. And also on the second hand, I would also have staff to be forceful. So I suppose I have to create a kind of love-hate relationship to an extent with library faculty in order to gain respect, but to also be forceful to lobby them for longer library hours.
Okay, well, let's finish off with your discussion topic, and this is what it is. Do you think it's unfair that to grant first-generation scholars an automatic £10,000 scholarship for postgraduate study when others only get this if they get a first?
Well, I think the first-generation scholars is a great scheme to have, but I think in terms of just the wider kind of grants and helping to pay for postgraduate education, it's great. But I think in general we should be moving away from this idea that you even have to pay for university. Like, I'm an advocate for the Campaign for Free Education, and I think that's really important. And so I think although it's great that universities bringing in these ways to help people pay for it and bringing more people into postgraduate education, in fact we shouldn't be paying for education at all.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I also do think that of course it's that of course so far National Union of Students have concern, or most of the student union have concern. Of course, they are aiming at the free education, but I do think that it can be taken as a step towards the free education. Of course, it's an admirable step and it can be carried on.
I suppose I'd have to agree with both of these. I'm also a staunch advocate of free education. I think that education is a right. It shouldn't be a privilege for anyone. In terms of kind of getting back slightly to the question and my manifesto and what I want to do about it, I think part of the reason that a lot of people don't do postgraduate degrees is because of funding, so that these new funding opportunities are really great. But what I want to do is actually properly investigate postgraduate funding and advertise it properly for students, because I think that's the main reason for why they don't do our more postgraduate degrees. So in terms of what I would want to kind of concretely do, despite the fact I do agree with free education, which is more of a long-term thing, in terms of what I would do realistically now is investigate and properly advertise funding opportunities.
Okay, well, thank you all for your time. Don't forget to keep tweeting in with the hashtag Sussex Elections to let us know what you think of this year's candidates, and we'll read your tweets out at the end of the show. Okay, well, we're finally on to our presidential rounds. The Students' Union President is ultimately responsible for the leadership and direction of the Students' Union through their role as Chair of the Students' Union Executive Committee, Trading Company Board and the Trustee Board. This position is also responsible for overseeing communication between the Students' Union and its members, as well as maintaining an overview of all Students' Union activities. Let's see this year's first round of presidential candidates for your Students' Union.
Hi, I'm Andy and I'm running for President of your Students' Union. I'd like to review the funding that the union receives both from the university and other streams, with a review to increasing it so we can do more things to support your activities. Secondly, I'd like to lobby the university to open a student hub, somewhere to make some lunch and relax between classes. And finally, I'd like Sussex alumni to benefit from further reduced postgraduate qualifications. Please vote Andy. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Miriam. I'm a second year philosophy, politics and economics student, and I'm running to be your student union president. So I'm running on the slogan of empower you, empower your SU, because I want you to get the most you can out of your time of university and make sure the union is student-led and you are leading that. I want to do that by making sure campaigns are at the forefront, so they're the things that make a real change to university life, like Access Sussex and IHOG Consent. And I want to make sure that there's a whole programme of events and activities that make sure that you're learning and getting the most that you can out of your union. So I hope you give me a chance to do that. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Josh Littlefair and I'm running for SU President. I want to increase the availability of campus institutions to wider student body, increase the amount of money that students have to spend, and increase the quality of your education. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me at jl476@sussex.ac.uk, and I hope you consider voting for me. Thank you.
We're here with Miriam Steiner, Andy Chapman and Callum Thomas, who are all running to be next year's Students' Union President. I'm now going to begin with your set question. If we could start with you, Andy. Should the university prioritise investing money into initiatives to reduce its carbon footprint or to improve teaching facilities?
Well, that's a very difficult question because, of course, they're both very important issues. As I'm sure we're all aware, the university's carbon management plan intended to reduce the carbon output by 44% by 2020. And of course, they've only achieved 13% so far. So I would say, whilst that's very important, we should leave the university to focus on what it's here to do, and that's improving the quality of education for everybody here and future students. I'd propose that the union picks up responsibility for holding the union to account and actually holding a steering role
to lead on how they should implement carbon reduction efficiencies in the future. And that enables both institutions to do what they do best and make use of the talent of the people involved in them.
Thank you. Okay, same question to you again, Miriam. Should the university prioritise investing money into initiatives to reduce its carbon footprint or to improve teaching facilities?
So I think the university doesn't need to pick between the two. You can reduce your carbon footprint by doing a lot of things like stopping wastage of lights, installing new energy efficient light bulbs, which there aren't in large parts of the campus, and better insulation of a lot of the old housing, which isn't a particularly costly thing to do. I think we definitely need more money towards our teaching facilities. It shouldn't be that we're still using carbon paper and chalkboards in this day and age. They can speed up things like electronic submission, which would also reduce carbon footprint. And hopefully the money spent on improving educational facilities will improve our educational experience as a whole and make sure the most disadvantaged are getting the best they can.
Okay, thank you. Same question to you again, Helen. Should the university prioritise investing money into initiatives to reduce its carbon footprint or to improve teaching facilities?
A lot of the major points have already been said by the other two candidates, but I'd just like to bring up potentially that there are problems with looking at it in terms of, well, looking at environmental issues and looking at teaching. So I think one can be very much a short-term thing, another can be a long-term thing. Of course, with the environment, it's going to take a lot longer. We'd say some of the bigger stuff like transportation, for people to go to, say, bicycles, for stuff like the Lemon Bus to take off, and for kind of carbon-neutral forms of transportation to take over, although, of course, other things have been mentioned. But short-term teaching really should be kind of brought to light about a case-by-case basis. So say there is a problem with teaching, I think a lot of students do notice it. They do notice that there are problems with the facilities that are there. They do notice there are a lot of problems overall. And essentially it should be brought forward at each point. So I think prioritising it in terms of short term and then long term, I think would be a much better strategy in terms of budget.
Okay, well, let's hear a little bit more about your individual manifestos. We'll start by asking you your personalised question, Miriam. Why do you think the Badger should have independence?
Okay, so this year there's been a lot of happening in the union that the Badger has not been able to report on. I still can't say it here because they'll probably try and sue me. And I really feel like the Badger should be able to hold union staff to account. So if they do something bad which you really need to know about, we can actually tell you. And that so people can actually trust the media outlets, and media outlets are treated like any other society. Same with politics society. We saw the student union try and intervene on an issue that the students did not want them to intervene in. I want to make sure that societies have the freedom to basically do what they want, and that includes holding your union to account and the university to account with a strong student media.
So if elected president, would that be your main campaign to try and increase the sort of individualisation and the freedom in terms of things like student media outlets?
I wouldn't see that as my main aim. My main aim would be putting campaigns at the forefront. So things like Access Sussex, which I started up. I'm really passionate about improving accessibility around the university. And those are the things that make a real difference long term to the university. Things like getting the Badger independent and politics societies independent won't take that long. It's just a signing of a form, but it's just something that someone needs to do.
Okay, thank you. Andy, your question. Do students want or need greater access to the president, and if so, how will you achieve this?
Okay, anecdotally I've spoken to a lot of fellow students, and one of the criticisms they've raised is whilst they can see that officers, the wider officer team does do a good job and they agree with a lot of the work that they do, they often feel that Falmer House can be something of a fortress, something that if you're not involved in the union you wouldn't necessarily know where to go, or that you had the right or the ability to access one of the officers. I think Sussex students would benefit from, whether they're aware of it or whether it's something that comes up in the future, have access to officers. And certainly if I were elected president, I'd ensure that I worked at least one day a week in a different office in different academic schools, or even in the library, so that I'm visible and people can come and speak to me, even if it's just to give some informal feedback. I think that's very important.
Okay, thank you. Callum, your question is, how would you implement your policy to set up another students' union bar on campus?
Well, we've got a number of spaces on campus, and I say really a number, I think there's only really one or two that are properly available. Underneath York House, there is a space that used to be occupied by the old union shop, which I think was here before I moved into university actually. And that space has actually been not used at all since I've been here. It's pretty much laid dormant. And it seems like quite a good place to be able to set it up, and I was really interested in looking at location, because I found, especially with East Slope Bar, the location is very, very interesting. It's also quite close to all of the different accommodation blocks, and I find if you were to set one up that was actually further away from that, it potentially wouldn't make as much money, or it wouldn't be as accessible to many of the students. But it mainly comes back into this idea we do actually need to cater for the new students coming in, as well as actually providing a bar that's not completely rammed on a Tuesday night. But of course it will always be quite busy.
So what sort of benefits do you think having this additional bar will bring to the university and the Students' Union?
Well, I think it will give a lot more revenue to the Students' Union because of the new students coming in, and of course in terms of the increase. But it also, in terms of the bars themselves, I think it does kind of foster some form of camaraderie between them, between people. You find that a lot of the time when you do go to see student bars, it's very, very different, say, going out in Brighton. You find it's a lot more relaxing. Of course, you're talking to other students and you do share a lot of very, very funny experiences from both different situations. And I think that really is what you want to foster. You want to foster the idea of community at the university, and I think that'll be very beneficial over the next couple of years or so.
Okay, thank you. Well, candidates, let's begin discussion of the following topic. The union should introduce gender quotas to ensure a more representative gender balance in future presidential races. Please discuss.
Is it okay if I start?
Please do.
Cool. So I'm the only girl running in this election, and I tried to run in the presidential election. I tried to run a campaign with FemSoc before this, encouraging people from underrepresented groups to run. It didn't work. We got more people running for disabled student rep, but not for president. So I don't think quotas are the way to go, because you can't just kick out candidates for being men and you can't make women run. But we do need some form of positive action, because it's not good enough that I'm the only girl running right now.
I think I echo Miriam's thoughts, and I think we have to be careful to recognise it's not just about gender, it's also other marginalisations and other exclusions such as race, ethnicity, even non-visible identifiers as well. And there was just a debate taking place on Facebook today with Daniel Greenberg, the current operations officer. And at the time I mentioned that I think the union has a responsibility, following on from the referendum this academic year, to conduct further research to look at how other unions are dealing with this issue. It's clear we have a problem with non-white men being comfortable applying for the role of president, but I don't think we understand the barriers and the issues. And we need some perhaps academic research, maybe some guidance from the NUS and other universities as well, to see what we can do. Maybe it's a change of the name, maybe it's something deeper than that, and it could indicate structural issues taking place here on campus that the union, quite frankly, has a responsibility to pick up and deal with.
I would definitely agree with the two sentiments before, definitely. I think it's definitely a confidence issue. I think you find there's a certain format that a president should fit, and I think breaking down what that format should be in terms of somebody who's quite charismatic, etc., should really potentially be a priority. As for quota systems, I think they miss what is quite a large problem, which is actually that stuff like elections will highlight certain issues that are wider in society in terms of people going for positions, going for jobs. And I think rather than essentially trying to clarify it and say, this is a stratified way of doing it, we have to tackle the issues of why people feel as if they can't get involved, why they feel as if they don't want to get involved. And I think that will produce a much better outcome than simply putting forward a quota system, because it should be reasonably meritocratic, although we do have to have a good positive action on there as well.
Yeah, I do think the issue does reflect kind of our societal roles as well, because the welfare officer, kind of a more traditionally women-dominated role, has a lot more women running for it than president. So it's not something that we can change for the whole society, but we definitely need to do something, because it's just not good enough at the moment.
It can definitely be a start, guaranteed, in terms of actually trying to at least change that notion and actually saying, look, the position itself really, it seems more kind of prime ministerial than it really does seem presidential. It's not really in terms of the really powerful leader. It is actually working as a collective to some extent. So I think doing that and maybe putting forward these ideas that actually it's not about your kind of appearance and your personality, but it's actually about what you do in that position and how you can benefit the university as a whole. And I think people definitely will come together and will say, actually, I think I can definitely improve that, rather than simply, I know that seems strange being on UniTV and saying, appearance is not very important, but I think we've kind of got to challenge that to some extent.
And I wonder, just to add another point, I wonder to what extent it speaks to how much students feel that they're able to access the union and how much they feel that they're part of that core part of the union. To run for election is quite something, as I'm sure you guys agree, to throw your hat into the ring. And maybe this reflects a kind of an alienation on campus, that people, they go to Falmouth and East Slope Bar, they maybe sometimes benefit from advice and representation, but how included, how embedded in the union daily life do they feel, and how does that reflect in standing for election?
Okay, well, it's been really interesting hearing all your points. Thank you all for your time and best of luck. We'll now be moving on to the second and final round of candidates running for President of the Students' Union.
Hi, my name's Max. I'm running for President. I'm a socialist. I'm also the delegate to NUS Disabled Conference this year. Now, 30-second videos are very difficult, so I'm going to cut the bullshit. We are going to be the generation facing £40,000 worth of debt. We're the generation who don't know what jobs we're going into, and we are going to be the first generation to be worse off than our parents, and all I have to say to that is fuck that and fight back. So if you agree with that sentiment, then vote for me. And even if you don't, but you think it's more interesting than the normally bland SU elections you see, then vote for me as well.
Well, a big welcome to our final round of presidential candidates, Abe Baldry, Max O'Donnell-Savage and Josh Littlefair. Well, let's start with a set question for your category, and we'll begin with you, Max. Here's your question.
Yeah.
Should the university prioritise investing money into initiatives to reduce its carbon footprint or to improve teaching facilities?
Well, first of all, I wish they would prioritise on one of those issues, because at the moment I can't see them prioritising in either of them. They seem to be prioritising on management's pay and turning the university into a business. But secondly, I'd say that's a complete false dichotomy. People in power, people in charge always say you either have to cut this or you either have to cut this. You can't fund everything, and I think that's bullshit. Basically, I think that you can't sacrifice the environment and you can't sacrifice teaching. What is the point of a university if it does not teach, and what is the point of a university if it does not look forward? And so I would say actually what we need is we need a fighting union. We need a union that's campaigning to say actually we want everything. This is our world. This isn't management's world. This isn't the government's world. This is our world, and we're going to take it. So I would say you can't prioritise those two issues. They're both so important. And so I would say we want everything, and we're going to get everything, and we're going to fight for it.
Well, is there any way in particular that you would try and tie these two issues in tandem?
Well, obviously, I think many departments are. You look at global studies. So many areas of global studies are going to have to focus on climate change. Climate change is one of the biggest issues we're facing, and it's not just an issue that everyone's facing, it's an issue that's based on structural inequality. Poorer communities, certain countries are going to be far worse off from climate change, and so education is the key to solving climate change. It's not about investment. Investment's not the key. Investment's useful, but education is the key, and that's why I'd say that they go in tandem and they're a dual process. You can't look at one in isolation.
Okay, well, same question to you, Abe. Should the university prioritise investing money into initiatives to reduce its carbon footprint or to improve teaching facilities?
I mean, I would absolutely say that it doesn't have to be one or the other of those things. And one of the projects that I've been working on this year has been a proposal that we're taking to the university at the moment to install solar panels all over campus. Now, this is something which will pay for itself in the space of 7 years, and thereafterwards will actually generate money, which can then be reinvested in other facilities. At the same time, I have prioritised improving the facilities which are available for students, and just today we had the announcement that the university are going to spend in excess of £10 million on a new student union building. So I think it doesn't have to be one or the other, it absolutely can be both, and over the past 9 months I've tried as much as possible to put that into practice.
Okay, thank you. Again, the same question to you, Josh. Should the university prioritise investing money into initiatives to reduce its carbon footprint or to improve teaching facilities?
Well, like the other two, personally, I don't feel it's not mutually exclusive. However, if I had to fall on one side or the other, I would choose teaching. I feel that the purposes of coming to university primarily is for your education and to achieve academically, particularly given the £9,000 worth of fees. I feel the students receive a better return on their education than they currently do. And I feel that actually, if we do improve the teaching, that means that the university will improve in the rankings such as the Times or Guardian. That will lead to more students, more money from fees, which can then even be invested back into low carbon sustainable initiatives.
Okay, thank you. Well, now let's move on to talking about your personal manifestos as potential presidents. Let's begin with you, Abe. Your question is, how would you implement campus rent controls?
Oh, fantastic question. So this is something which I've been working on since I started the job 9 months ago, and we've actually set up a campus rent working group, which consists of myself, other student union officers, members of staff at the university, and crucially independent members of the university council. And we're going to look at this issue of fair campus rents and ensure that when East Slope is demolished, that we have a range of accommodation, so that Sussex isn't just about Sussex isn't just there if you're from a wealthy background. So this is something that I'm actively working on at the moment, and very much look forwards to working on next year if re-elected.
Okay, thank you. Next is your question, Max. So how will you change the democratic processes of the Students' Union to make elected officers more accountable?
Well, I think there are lots of ways that it can be done, because what I've found during campaigning is I can kind of say anything, and if I get elected, nothing really keeps me to it, and that's crap. And so what I really want, and I think would be really fun to keep people on their toes, is a way that you can actually recall elected officers. Obviously there's a lot of things to work through in that about, how you would replace them mid-term and stuff like that. But I feel that, if I get elected and I'm not doing a good job, I shouldn't be paid for it. I shouldn't be sitting in a lovely office being paid for my time while there are students struggling, while there are students needing support and I'm not providing it. So basically my idea is that we should be able to recall student union officers somehow. So they have to stay on their toes, so they have to stay responsive to the student body, and so they don't get lax or complacent. It's my general idea. Specifics will be worked out when I win, if I win.
Okay, thank you. Now we're on to your question, Josh. So how would you go about providing cheaper prices on campus?
I think first of all it has to start with a working group between university management, between students of various years and schools and faculties, and also obviously the people that actually run those institutions. I think we'd have to start from a pricing point of view of their costs and work out a fair, obviously fair is a very subjective term, but a fair percentage to increase their base cost by for them to make a profit on. I know for a fact that having worked in cafes, managing them, that the prices of coffees and teas and things like that, the percentage increase they add up and their markup is hundreds of percent, and I think that's one of the key areas that I could look at.
Okay, well thank you. We're going to end now with a discussion topic, so please debate the following topic amongst yourselves. The union should introduce gender quotas to ensure a more representative gender balance in future presidential races.
3 men answering that question. I mean,
controversial.
What a great place to start. I think that's a really interesting idea. I mean, we've had a lot of discussion leading up to this about, is the name of president, is that something which puts off men? Is it something that puts off men? I would suggest probably not. Is it something that puts off women? And I think that we should, aim more to encourage more women to run for the role. I don't know. I guess the question of whether or not there should be a quota per se would be something. I'm not sure how that would work in practice. But I think it's certainly an interesting idea. And all female party shortlists have worked very effectively in a number of political parties in the UK. I know it's something that the Greens do. I know it's something that Labour do, with really positive effects. So if there was some way of implementing it, I think that's a really interesting thing to explore.
Firstly, I want to say that for things like NUS delegate elections, I think that gender quotas are really, really good and really, really useful. For positions like this, where only one person can get in, I don't really see how they would work effectively. You can't I don't think you can tell certain men not to run, and you certainly can't make women run if they don't want to. But you do have to look at the wider culture surrounding this. This isn't just a question of who runs in student union elections. It's a question of the fact that society in general is sexist, and you're only going to fight that by fighting the bigger pictures of it, the bigger representations of it. I mean, look at university lecturers, right? Look at tutors. There is a gender pay gap. No one's talking about that much. We should be talking about the fact that women get screwed over and messed over so much in this society. And there's a really great article by a person called Carol Hannis. She coined the term "the personal is political," and she basically said, women are messed over, not messed up, and I think that's what we've got to look for. We've got to look for female empowerment, and especially not led by men. You know, I don't know why the hell I'm talking about this, because I don't know the answers to women's liberation, but as a student union president, I want to, you know, allow all oppressed groups to actually have a fight, not to sit there and fucking lobby or get gender quotas. I want to challenge fucking oppressive structures at their core. That's what I'm about. But again, I don't think I should lead it unless I'm part of that oppressed group. So yeah, that's a short answer.
I don't think quotas are a good idea necessarily. Of course, more does need to be done for gender equality. I think one of the main things we could look at, if I was made president, would be to work with the society and activities officers and arrange sort of information evenings and encourage more of the female student body on campus to get involved with the political side of things and work through like that.
Okay, well, thank you all for your comments. We have now heard from all of the candidates who have joined us here today. Finally, let's read out a couple of our final tweets. At RG_Bargy tweets, yes, at Bethan_Hunt, our international students are not cash cows. Well done on successful year of standing up for this. And Sophie Rosie Fiery tweets at UniTV Live, a vote for Leah at Leah for Welfare is a hella good choice. For more information, head over to www.sussexstudent.com/elections, where you can read through each prospective candidate's individual manifestos in more detail. Again, voting opens at 9 a.m. next Monday on the 23rd of March at www.sussexstudent.com/vote. So don't forget to log in to elect your very own Students' Union full-time officers. A big thank you to all of the candidates who've joined us today, and we wish you all the very best of luck in your campaigns. Thank you for watching Candidate Question Time 2015 with me, Christine Hui.